chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to College Volleyball Weekly, episode 270. And this is the NCAA Division 1-2 Week 15 recap. On screen are some of the crankiest dudes you're going to catch this morning. Jay's screen alone.
I'm not cranky at all,
Wait,
buddy. Let's rephrase that.
Yeah, me neither. I feel great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I think I speak for everyone else in the country when I say, screw you guys.
Well, we've got Dan in a good mood because he now owns Chicago. You've got Theo because he actually knocked Brad off the broadcast and the podcast too. So Brad, Theo Edwards of CSUN, and then Salty J in Nova because, well, he'll explain why. But he's of George Mason. And coming in hot will be Brad Rothschild after he recovers from it, licking his wounds from his 2 losses and 5 this last week. But gentlemen, good day to you. And hey, let's start with our favorite topic, the elephant in the room. And since everyone wants to know why Jay is cranky, I mean, that's more the norm than it is the
Yeah, I'll go first. We hosted Penn State twice this past weekend, and in the first set on Friday, we lost 23-25, but we had 8 service errors, and just didn't clean up some of the transition opportunities that we had, and we won the next 2 sets, felt pretty good about those, and then went into the 5th and just couldn't put it away when it mattered most. So we lost that first night. Didn't feel too good, but definitely understood why and went back out the next night. Next night, we're up 24-21 in the first set and gave it away and felt really just not very good about that. And then won the next 2 sets. And so, then we ended up losing in 5 after going up 8-7 in the 5th and the switch. And, just couldn't put a ball away. Couldn't find a serve. We knew we had 4 match points in set 4 to take it as well. And went into overtime and just couldn't figure out a way to get a win. And, after the match, especially after Friday, but after Saturday's match, I went into the locker room and I really didn't have much. I just kind of looked at my guys and I said, I know this stings and I know you're upset, but we'll have to learn how to get better. And, hats off to Penn State. They just kept coming at us and we just didn't have an answer. And it's been a while since we've beaten Penn State. That's a frustrating one. And I thought we had figured out a few things, and we had lost a starter from Friday night's match into Saturday. So we had to put some other people in and just we didn't have the right stuff. So unfortunately went 0-2 on the weekend, but felt pretty good about some things. Went down in a couple of those sets pretty early and pretty big. And my guys battled and came back and won a couple of those, and that's good. And, a lot of good defense back and forth, and great crowds. We almost sold out the place on both nights, and that's fun. And would have liked to have gotten a W, but it just is what it is at this time of year. You look around the country and, teams are scrapping. There's not only a lot of scrapping on the court with the play, but there's also a lot of scrapping going on in the net. There's a lot of jarring back and forth. We watched a lot with CSUN and San Diego. We watched a lot with Hawaii and Long Beach. There's a lot of heightened moments right now, and tensions are tight. So it's fun though. This is the time of the year when it gets really exciting, and there's a lot of great matches coming up, and I'm sure we'll talk about those later. But yeah, unfortunately, just didn't feel that we performed at our best on those 2 nights.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to ask about the EIVA conference update of you, but other gentlemen on the screen, you want to chime in on the George Mason Penn State match, is it all?
Be gentle, boys. That's all I ask.
Jump in as you
feel. I'll chip in. Just in looking at the box score and knowing the serious nature of Jay's frustration, these teams were really, really closely matched. A lot of the numbers are pretty neck and neck, and I think the big difference for George Mason, at least in this, is on that second night and not having French, who's been a real big part of their offense and a real big part of what they've been doing. And actually, I think in night one, looking at the stats, I mean, this is about as close to a perfect night as it gets in terms of George Mason offensively. They had almost every single hitter was hitting close to 350 or above outside of one. And so as a team effort, I mean, I think they played really great and missed a couple of serves at some critical moments. I didn't get a chance to watch night two, but it looks like, French was obviously a necessity and something that they could have used if obviously he was healthy or whatever was going on. But like Jay said, I think this is a really, really competitive time of year. And the tension is high, and I know for a lot of these student athletes, man, they want to win. They want to see some fruits to their labors. But yeah, I thought this was really, really competitive. Obviously, 2 5-setters and some really high level volleyball.
Dan, anything to add?
No, I mean, I've been there 5-game sets matches, and you don't quite pull it out. I've played my fair share this year, so I think. But I think, Mason's got Charleston coming up, I believe. So I think as any coach, Jay's waiting to see how his guys respond as they walk into this last weekend of conference play, which becomes pretty important for them and where they're at. And so, and I'm sure he'll get his guys in a good spot because it wasn't by lack of playing some good volleyball. I think when you're there and you're just not finishing on a red zone scenario, we know that that's possible. It's just a matter of kind of turning the corner.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a great segue because I wanted to ask you, Jay, what does that mean for the EIVA conference tournament or EIVA championships, as we need to brand it appropriately? Because right now you've got Princeton at 9-1 atop, Penn State now at 7-3, NJIT at 3rd, Harvard and Charleston tied for 4, and Mason at the 6th spot. So what does that mean for this final week of play?
Yeah, no, it's huge. This weekend's implications are huge. So Princeton goes to Penn State. I believe they go there. I don't think they host. But those 2 matches matter. If Princeton wins one of the 2 matches, they will host the EIVAs. If Penn State pulls out both of those matches, they will host the EIVAs. So it's a big, big weekend. I'm looking at both teams right now, and both teams are kind of firing on a lot of cylinders. I like Princeton's chances to take one of those 2, but Penn State just keeps coming at you. They may not be the Penn State that everybody knows and loves and can roll through things, but they still scrap. And they got a couple guys that they can put the ball away when it matters most. And, they play good defense. And so you just kind of hope that, Princeton has the juice left in the tank to be able to take one of those 2 matches. And then everybody goes up to New Jersey for the week.
Yeah. Nero Omene and Mason Rice, as well as Henry Wedbush, have been really playing good ball towards the end here, which is giving Princeton that postseason surge, so to speak. But wanted to get the other coaches' takes on this final week of the EIVA and what's happening in the standings this week.
Well, I think it's interesting because you look at this matchup between George Mason and Penn State, and if this is anytime you have a 5-setter, it can be somewhat of a coin flip, right? It's that 15-point set is incredibly hit and miss in terms of consistency of who's going to win, and you get a couple of balls to bounce your way and you win it. And you look at the standings. If George Mason pulls off both these games and you reverse it, they're sitting in 2nd place, and Penn State is out of the hunt, and now Penn State is potentially looking to host. I mean, it's pretty wild, man. And it's definitely the exciting part of the year. And yeah, it's my take.
Want to welcome to the conversation whose favorite number is not 5, Brad Rothschild of UC San Diego. We're talking about George Mason. All right, go Dan.
Well, I think that's like a lot of the conference tournaments. I mean, Princeton and Penn State are jockeying for first, and whoever hosts puts themselves in a little bit better position about comfortability of playing at home. But everybody else can beat anybody in the quarter in that first round. So
yeah,
I think Jay's going to compete with Charleston, Harvard, and NJIT are going to compete. So you're going to see these guys go after it and then get rematched up the following week as they get into their conference tournament. And so, it'll be slight things, I think, that put a team in a position to win those quarterfinals. But I think Princeton or Penn State hosting puts themselves in a little bit better spot.
Yeah. Brad, anything to add on the EIVA conference race? We were talking about where Penn State was and is right now.
No, I think it's just been a lot of big swings in terms of the conference standings, and whether that's, teams just getting hot at different times throughout the year. But yeah, Princeton, Penn State, whoever's going to be hosting is obviously in a good spot. I do think Princeton's been a little more consistent throughout the year, which is pretty clear, which I think gives them a little bit of a nod here as I look at who's going to end up hosting. But like Dan said, conference tournament time, anyone can take down Princeton, Penn State if they're hosting, no problem. So it'll be real intriguing.
The only bummer about Princeton hosting, if you will, is and somebody posted this in Volley Talk, which I find really funny, is Princeton doesn't have challenge replay system. And I don't think the matches, if they go there, will necessarily be decided by a challenge replay system, but there can be some momentum broken here and there by not having it. And somebody who wrote it said something about, Princeton has the largest endowment of any university in the country, which I don't know if that's true or not. I don't have any ideas, but it's a shame that men's volleyball, they can't have challenge replay for their teams. Those endowments are not set aside for athletics. It's set aside for the university. And for those of you that don't know Sam, he fundraises every year for his budget. He does not get a hard budget from the university. So, for him to have to come up with an extra 50, 60, 70 grand, depending upon on the cost, to be able to put in a challenge replay system, that puts a stress on his fundraising ability. So I know the EIVA is getting ready to make it a mandate where you have to have it, which is good. But that's the really only difference between Princeton hosting and Penn State is Penn State obviously has challenge replay, which can ease some minds a little bit. I hate going into gyms that don't have it. It definitely adds a little stress to the whole thing because the ball moves pretty fast. And as we've seen throughout the course of the year, there's been some big points that have been decided by, the ability to have that challenge in place.
Yeah, I was surprised by your comment. I didn't know they didn't have it. I think that's I think it should be mandatory in your league. Like they should have challenge replay. And honestly, it's not 50 or 60,000. It's 10 or 12 if you get the system, the one system. So it's a manageable thing that I think they should be figuring out if they don't have it.
Well, the system itself is 12,000, but it's all the conduit and all the wiring you got to do inside the gym. That's the expensive part. Because for us, it was the same thing. It was 12 grand to get the system, which is great. But then my facilities people came back and said, hey, I got to run conduit here. I got to run conduit there. And next thing you know, it's 40 grand on top of what that was. So it just is.
And Princeton's gym was built in the 1400s. So pretty tough to do any construction in that place, man.
Yeah, very, very true. Very, very true.
Dig through the bedrock, right, Theo?
Exactly.
Well, let's shift conferences. Let's go over to the King of Chicago, at least for the time being, and that would be Dan, friend of Lewis. Had a big match this week, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. Nikki Sandlin, Dan Friend's Venmo is alive and active. So if you want to go cash or a gift of any kind, please do so. He'll accept it willingly. So Dan, tell us what happened.
Hold on, before he even starts, Dan, when is the last time Loyola has won at Lewis?
Last year.
Oh. All right, never mind. Go ahead.
No, we played well against Loyola on Thursday. We had a good game plan. We executed at a high level. Like it was interesting. After game one, we were hitting 600 or 700, and they were hitting 400. So it was certainly pretty offensively after game one. But our guys did a nice job and jumped on some things, and it was a good win. And you saw Loyola bounce back on Saturday and get the must win they needed to get to make sure they secured home court advantage against Ball State. They beat Ball State in 4, and I think that was pretty key for them. And McKendree took care of business for them and ended up in a tie with Loyola for first place in league, but ended up the second seed from the tiebreaker. Ohio State took care of things at Quincy and unfortunately eliminated Quincy from the conference tournament because they ended up 9 in their tiebreaker with Queens. And then Ohio State had the tiebreaker on us by a game. So we tied for third, but they ended up the third seed. We ended up the fourth seed. Ball State came in at 5, so they come to our place. And all these quarterfinal games will be played on Saturday at some varying times. Lindenwood got 2 wins against Queens, and they'll be headed to Ohio State. And then I think you've got Queens left and Purdue-Fort Wayne. Purdue-Fort Wayne ended up 7. So they'll go to McHenry after they played them twice. And I'm curious, I haven't, like Purdue, I'm not sure played all their starters all the time. So I didn't know if they were resting or things like that. And then you've got Queens coming to Loyola at the 8-1 seed. So those will be all your quarterfinal rounds. So
Yeah. Well, wanted to comment on particularly the play of your match against Loyola. Max Rocky went off 13 kills, 1 error, hit 522, got an ace, couple digs, and 4 blocks for 16 points, and was on fire. Got to watch a little bit of that match. Actually watched all of it, but you guys seem to be staying like they're humming.
yeah, Max showed why he was an All-American. Do you know what I mean? So he's pretty impressive that night, and he's a senior. Last possible home game, you never know with that stuff. Do you know what I mean? And so he came out to
At least
play.
regular season home
Regular
game.
season, right? So I think he came out to play, and OG came out to play, and our libero Nico played with a temp. So I was impressed that he just played, and so he was battling some stuff, and but pretty impressive by him just to give the effort he did, which is great. So
Yeah. Well, let's let the other guys coach on or chime in on the MIVA happenings this last week.
I think Rob, you kind of hinted at it, but you know, me and Brad decided to play volleyball till like midnight that night, so we didn't get to watch it live. But essentially, looking at the stats from Loyola, I mean, in first right away, I'm thinking, okay, they must have slowed down Parker, must have shut down Fabakovic. Looking at the numbers, and Parker hit almost 400, Fabakovic hit 600. Loyola hits 400 on the night. I'm like, they got swept. What happened here? Go down to Lewis's stats. They made 6 errors all night. Hit over 500, and like we just said, right? OG 350, Daniel Haber 500, and then Max Rocky 522. I mean, 3 guys with double-digit points. I mean, offensive as heck. And then looking at the passing numbers, I think that's where it gets even more interesting. Loyola outpassed them by a pretty significant clip, which really tells you a lot about Tyler's night and what he did as a setter, and keeping these guys in system, and the hitters doing a great job of getting after it. So Dan obviously does a fantastic job with this team, but man, this was probably one of the more impressive offensive nights I've seen all year. I mean, Rob, most teams hit 500 every night, but
yeah, I mean, not a big deal for you, Theo. So
easy peasy, lemon breezy. Listen, my thing is, first of all, Battle Chi-Town is back with Shane and Dan. I love that more than anything. I think Theo hit it. It was going to be my topic. The fact that the passing maybe not as crisp as most nights for Dan's team. Tyler did a fantastic job keeping that second contact in a place where their hitters could still be aggressive. And that's the real difference maker, right? It's one thing, you know, to have a big hitter that can get you out of trouble no matter where the ball is. But when you have a bunch of hitters that can still be somewhat in rhythm, even when it's not a perfect pass, that's a huge difference maker right there. And just, you know, watching Lewis battle in matches at this time of year, it makes any team that has to face him just go, man, we know we're going to get bloody. We know we're going to get tired. It's going to be sweaty. It's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight. And they got a big one coming up against Ball State. And it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. I can't wait to watch it.
I thought the most impressive piece, similar to what these guys were talking about with Tyler Morgan said so well, was Loyola had 2 blocks on the entire night. And they're pretty big, pretty physical, really good blocking team. And offensively, if you're only going to block twice in a 3-set match, you're doing a lot of things well. So I thought that just continued to show the offensive supremacy that they had on that night.
anything else, gentlemen, on the MIVA or even Dan?
And I think with the MIVA, I was kind of surprised looking at how everything shook out for Ohio State. You know, with how the season had started, I thought they were going to be more in the 4 or 5 seed. and seeing them sneak up to the 3 seed and really kind of get hot with the reemergence of Shane Wetzel over the past few weeks. I think they're a team that absolutely is in a position to keep staying hot and win the first round, and most likely play McKendree and set themselves up for a really good matchup going into the final.
Yeah, the first round, I think 2 of the matches are pretty, I want to say lopsided. That's the wrong word, because the MIVA, obviously people can beat anybody, but 2 of those matches are I think easier to read. The 2 others are gnarly, and then the semifinals, all bets are off. Anybody can beat anybody, and that conference tournament is going to be an absolute bloodbath.
Well, Jamie provided fodder for teams that are lower seeded to pull off some upsets, and Lord knows that's totally capable this year, the way we've been seeing things pan out in the MIVA. So,
well, I think Loyola Queens, I think Loyola takes that. As much as I think Queens could, I just don't think they have that gear. And McKendree and Purdue Fort Wayne, I believe, Dan, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Purdue Fort Wayne hasn't really had a consistent lineup all year. I'm not sure if they're saving them for this week or not, but I don't think it's their year. I think this is McKendree's year. So I think they roll. I don't want to say roll, but they win that match pretty handily. It's the next round, because you look at the people that'll come out of the 2 matches in between, and holy smokes, man. I mean, it's brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Yep. Going to a kind of non-volley issue, but wanted to ask how Ray Strong Night went on Tuesday, Dan.
Oh, it's Thursday, but yeah, it was great. We raised over 2,500. It was awesome. So, and we did a thing with VFC, which is Volleyball for Charity, and they work in the Oak Lawn Park District area, and they had a unified group out, and so they played 6-on-6 during games 2 and 3, and that's for those who don't know, some kids with some mental disabilities, and so, or physical disabilities too. So it was awesome. They played that, and we raised a bunch of money, and it was a really good event. I appreciate everybody that supported that. So thank you very much.
Love the community efforts and participation in volleyball, because life happens off the court as well. So really appreciate you doing that, Dan. And then also always good to see you guys rocking the purple stuff for Ray too.
Yeah. I get away with, well, in lieu of helping McKendree, right? So that
That's why you wore the purple. You're supporting McKendree that night. All right, let's move on over to what could be a painful topic for one and a joyful topic for another. That would be the other elephants in the room. That would be Brad and Theo, who squared off against each other. And I'm just going to say, remind me of the old Muhammad Ali, George Foreman matchups, or Frazier, even Ali back in the day. Slugfest. But we'll let you guys go. What do you think? Should we go with Brad first and then end on a positive note? Let's do Brad's take on the CSUN UC San Diego matchup this last week in the Big West.
Yeah, it was a boatload of volleyball, that's for sure. I think the total points scored was almost 11 sets of volleyball, because we had some extended sets night 1, some extended sets night 2, and then a pretty insane 38, 36, 39, 37 set 4 Saturday night. And yeah, I think overall, just very competitive volleyball. I think both nights were separated by 2 total points. Unfortunately for us, CSUN was the benefactor of those 2 total points throughout the course of those 5 sets. And I think ultimately, night 1, I just think Northridge defensively and their block was a little bit stronger and a little bit more crisp. That gave them more transition opportunities, and they had a lot of success, whether it be setting quick out of those transition opportunities or going a lot to Jalen Phillips in those opportunities. And really their middles and Jalen played great, and really all of Northridge played great. And then night 2, a lot of it came down to just our serving from the end line, especially in key moments. I thought overall we served pretty well, but in the bigger moments or late in some of those sets, we just weren't quite able to manufacture enough pressure to continue the consistency or continue the defense in the block that we had rolling earlier on in the sets. But yeah, it was high level volleyball, 2 tough battles. And yeah, I have a feeling we're probably going to see some more of it in a couple weeks.
All right, let's just jump over to Theo, and then the other coaches can chime in.
Yeah, I mean, Brad nailed it in the sense that it was as advertised. Two really, really good teams, and we match up very similarly in a lot of ways. Two really good opposites who are capable of taking over matches, and we watched that on both nights. We watched a lot of different swings and a lot of really, really creative volleyball, a lot of tactical adjustments, and really just a lot of fun. And you know, I think Brad kind of nailed it in the sense that, you know, I think serving was a big piece. And, you know, we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, but when you're at home, there's a comfort in serving that when you get on the road, it can be really tough, and it can be difficult to kind of find your rhythm. And I mean, we were backs against the wall in set 4 at San Diego, and you know, San Diego was kind of serving really tough, putting us in really, really difficult situations. And it seemed like we were going to lose. Like it really felt like they kind of had us. And then Jalen just kind of went into a gear that I don't know that I've seen all year. I don't know maybe if I've seen it his entire career. He had, I think UCSD in set 4 on Saturday had 11 match points that we had to fight off. And I think Jalen had 9 kills in those 11 match points. In just counting sets 4 and 5, he had 22 kills in 2 sets. And I mean, really it was a full 2 sets, because normally set 5 is only 15, but because set 4 went 39-37, I mean, we had enough points that it was 2 full sets in points. But I mean, I tip my hat to San Diego, because they're playing some really, really great ball right now, and obviously we are doing some nice things as well. But I think both teams were well over 300 and just playing some great ball. And the number of fans that came up to me after the match that was just talking about how great the 2 programs are and just how exciting the volleyball was to watch was really, really cool. So it was a really exciting weekend, and I mean, we're happy to be on the winning side of it for sure.
Yeah. I feel like if Brad were an ESPN commercial, he's in his office opening a door and Jalen Phillips shows up there. He goes over to the library, Jalen Phillips shows up there. All right. Let's let Dan and Jay chime in.
I'm pretty sure, Rob, you can look this up, but that has to be a season record, like 60 some points in 10 sets. I don't know. I'd be curious. Like, that's a lot. Like 34, 35 one night, 28 or 29 the other night. That's a ton of points. Pretty special player you got, Theo. So those guys are always nice in the clutch. And Anthony was fantastic too. But
yeah.
I think it'll be exciting to watch these 2 play again when they get the opportunity to in the conference tournament. So and it's in Hawaii, right? I'm correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
So but sorry, Brad, Theo, you get the bragging rights for a little bit, I guess. You know what I mean? So that's how it goes. I guess Theo's got all bragging rights. He beat me. He beat Brad. Like, good job, Theo. Yeah, beat Jay. Yeah. So,
hey, he's got Irvine this week. Don't be celebrating yet.
God's coming after him.
Well, I'll comment quickly here. First of all, when Brad takes a sip of his coffee, he's going to see a picture of Jalen Phillips on the inside of the cup. Now, it's just here's the funny thing. You know, we talked about Dustin Watton and his video and about commenting on men's volleyball and this and that, and there should be different scoring or whatever the case is. I don't know, whatever Dustin's talking about. I believe Theo and Brad just gave you a blueprint of how matches should be going, what new kind of scoring we can do. Everyone out there has heard of the You the Man drill. They just showed you the blueprint of what it could look like, because every ball was going to Jalen Phillips. Every single one. I think 9 out of 10 sets went to that kid in serve receive and maybe in transition as well. And you literally are looking at it just going, hey, everybody, it's going over to this guy. Let's go get this guy. Go get this guy. And he would elevate and find angles that people just don't have in their gyms. I mean, when the kid, I think the last time I checked, he touches 18 feet. When he touches 18 feet, there's not a lot of stuff you could do about it. And listen, Brad's team blocks really well. They got guys in people's faces, and they still couldn't slow that guy down. So that was, I think there should be no question mark who is going to be on everybody's player of the week for this week. I'm not going to steal it because it's too easy. But he definitely should. He should get sponsored by Ben Gay because he's going to need to ice that shoulder down after all those swings. And he should get a couple of tacos bought for him by his teammates because he got him out of trouble an awful lot. So hats off to Jalen and hats off to Northridge. You guys scrap like crazy. It's so much fun to watch. And San Diego was right there blow for blow. And it just kind of like us this week. And unfortunately, 2 points can make all the difference in the set. And that's what happened. But no shortage of great volleyball for sure.
I hope both those guys are in the USA gym. I would imagine so. Different conversation maybe later on, but Anthony and Jalen should both be in that gym, I hope. So,
well, let's look at the other match. It would be my kind of matches, which would be UC Santa Barbara series, also in the Big West. Went the distance on Thursday night up in Santa Barbara land, and but UC Irvine without Hilir Hano and Max Grigoriev. UC Irvine had to fight off 4 match points for Santa Barbara in the 4th set. They brought in Aiden Rigg, redshirt freshman setter from Honolulu. Guess uncle or dad played Pepperdine back in the day. Got it done. Was able to get some key points at the end. Irvine forced a 5th set tiebreak, and it became a William Darcy show that night. So, and on Saturday night, you can tell UC Santa Barbara may have been a little tired, 3 and out, but we saw Hilir Hano and Max Grigoriev back in the lineup. No messing around. They took care of business, but it was one of the lowest offensive outputs. I know they don't hit anywhere near 500 like the Matadors do, but for Irvine, they're hitting below 250, and Santa Barbara is right around the 200 range, if I remember off the top of my head. So you can tell teams are a little on the weary side, but I think they're just getting ready for the tournament and this final week of play. But I do have to say, if you look at UC Santa Barbara's lineup, Rick's got it good for the next few years here. Young guys, freshmen and sophomore, because they play that potential they did on Thursday night. Big West is still going to be just a gnarly beatdown every single night. So Bruning is not a small guy, 6'10", built like a tank. Then you got Ethan Saint, a smaller outside hitter, but passes really good balls. And the setter, the transfer from Loyola, but a local kid from Orange County. It's escaping my head really quick here. Cole Schobel, yes. So he's got some really good pieces in place. So wanted to let you guys comment on the UCI Santa Barbara series.
I'll go quickly. 2 things. One, wondering why Hano and Grigoriev were not playing on Friday night. Maybe resting, maybe just an injury they're just nagging. They said that, hey, let's just go out there and get it. But for the rest of that team to get that experience and be able to pull off that win, that's huge. But you obviously see the second night when they put those guys back in, it's a different story. Irvine's got a few guys that they can chuck a high ball up to and get out of trouble. And another kind of you the man situation. Everyone in the gym knows that Hano's going to get it. And it's kind of a, hey, you go, now I go, and you go and I go, and so forth. Secondly, Isla Vista and Fontainebleau. If you know what I'm talking about, you probably know what was going on Friday night after that match. So
only 237 arrests this year, but it's up from 85 last year.
Isla Vista is a strange place. I remember guys would go in there saying they were going to play at Santa Barbara, and then 8 years later they come out 100 pounds heavier and definitely not any better volleyball playing going on, because it's just that place swallows you whole. Isla Vista is a crazy place, but it's a great place to go to school. I mean, if you want to have a good time. But I'm not commenting on the fact that those guys were not raging. It was just more of a comic moment. But Santa Barbara, the future looks bright. They got some young guys, and when Jesty's gone, that's going to be one heck of a load to carry for someone else. But I'm sure they'll find somebody. Rick's got good recruiting.
Yep. Anyone else? UCI Santa Barbara?
I think a lot of the number stuff that we're seeing, especially along Flexton and Heno, Obviously Heno being out that first night, but Flexton's numbers were really down this weekend. I think he hit around 180 on night one, 060 on night two. And so talking about kind of the offensive stuff and what Rob, what you were mentioning about their hitting numbers, right? The most of the year, I mean, that guy's been incredibly electric. And so, yeah, I think, but you know, what Santa Barbara's doing, I mean, they're a tough team to play, and they're really, really talented, and they've been flying below the radar in a lot of ways. But they're incredibly capable of putting up one hell of a match and making this Big West conference incredibly unique and challenging for sure.
Yep. Anything else? If
No,
not, you're going to go.
I think the $1 million question is, you know, with Heno and Grigoriev, are they going to be all right? Are they going to be healthy? And really, how are they going to, looking forward, you know, they obviously have Northridge this week, but how are they going to hold up over the course of the Big West Conference tournament, where it's looking like they're most likely going to have to play 3 straight matches, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if they want to win the tournament. So really interesting to kind of see or try to figure out why those guys weren't playing, or if they're going to be good to manage and withstand all that volume over the short period of time. And then for Santa Barbara, it's kind of the opposite problem, where they've cycled through 3-4 different outsides, you know, 2 opposites with George Bruning and Jess Bianchi on the right side. So seeing how that team continues to come together and continues to grow, we're seeing them play better and better volleyball as the year's gone on, and they've kind of found more of a rhythm.
Yeah. Well, the Big West Conference, the way it's panning out right now, you've got Long Beach atop and Hawaii tied at 6-2. And I believe, and I was looking for the conference tournament manual for this, but if it comes down to a tiebreaker between the two schools, is it head-to-head sets?
That's
Do
what
you guys remember from? So that would go towards Long Beach Stateway by winning in 3 in night 1. So, but with that, you have Irvine 3rd, CSUN 4.
They won in 4 night
Finney.
1, didn't they?
Was it 3-0? Let me check my results.
Well, regardless, they went 5 the next night. So
yeah, 3-1. Yeah, so it's 3-1
3-1.
on night 1. So
doesn't matter.
so and then Santa Barbara rounds it out in the 6th spot. So still a lot to be settled just in 1 week of play. But
you made a comment about Santa Barbara being young. I just here's the problem. The Big West is the best conference in the country. So I just and they're going to keep reloading. You got Theo and Brad who've done remarkable about getting their programs up to top 10, and that's still not good enough quite yet. Do you know what I mean? And so it's like Santa Barbara can be young, but the conference is tough. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you got to find a way to put yourself towards the top, and we're going to see Long Beach and Hawaii just reload with more foreigners year after year. So how do you put yourself in that space, and how do you make a run at it? Which they both can do in the conference tournament for sure. But I think it doesn't get any easier for Santa Barbara, young or not young, and putting them in a position to compete where they need to. You know, it's just kind of the nature of the game. So it'll be interesting to see the fallout from the NCAA on some of the programs in the Big West. Do they stay where they are in terms of recruiting, or do they ramp up to the? I don't know. Is Santa Barbara at the bottom of that? Do we have to worry about their program? I hope not. And what's all the fallout as we kind of get through some of the NCAA stuff over the next couple months?
Yeah. Well, with that, we're going to move on to the other eye-catching matches of the week, the UCLA Grand Canyon Series. Some great 5-setters. UCLA barely hanging on the night 1, but they recovered on night 2. But still, some great matches to be had. So wanted to get your take on the UCLA Grand Canyon Series, gentlemen. Who wants to jump in?
That was last week, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. UCLA, BYU, my bad. I am functioning very little sleep right now.
I was like, wait, what did I miss?
Well, I was looking at my notes. I meant to type BYU. So
that match was at UCLA?
Yes.
Yeah, there's your answer.
They won that for the home crowd, but Zach
I mean,
Rama.
I'll chime in here. You know, I think obviously UCLA is a really talented team, and I think they hit 400. And if you combine the 2 nights, they hit 400 on the weekend and played some really, really good volleyball. I think the interesting piece, and as we look towards kind of the MPSF tournament and what things look like moving forward, the offense for BYU was really stifled quite a bit. I think on the weekend, they hit 170, which, in this game, it's tough to win with those kind of numbers. And Keone Tim hit 064 on the weekend, and Benson was at 180. So saw a lot of ups and downs, a lot of inconsistencies. And, the interesting thing is we've been talking about this quite a bit, but the season is really long. Most of the Division I teams are now closing in on close to 28 matches. Some of the D2 teams have played more than that. And so we're at a point in the season where bodies and the trainers are really earning their paycheck now, because there is just so much physical wear and tear on the body. And with a guy like Keone Tim, who jumps out of the gym, has a dynamic arm, and my wonder would be, because no one ever really says, hey, whether you win or lose, like, oh, maybe that guy's dealing with a knee injury, or maybe that guy's dealing with a quad, or they don't really ever ask. But the reality is that these student athletes are under the gun and under a lot of pressure and a lot of wear and tear on the body. And this is the time of the year where it really pays off to take a match or two off. And that might be what Irvine decided to do this past week.
Well, and we talked about it before, BYU hit, you said, something on the weekend, or 1 something on the weekend. When you run the offense that they're running, which is basically all high ball out of system offense running, it's really tough for hitters to be successful against a block that's really well established. They're not flying across the net because they're running at a fast speed. I mean, for them to have had the matches they've had this year and be successful in a lot of them, it says a lot about, the quality of the hitters that they got. But over time, especially against a team like UCLA, has got a very good block. It's really tough for a hitter to be successful when all they're doing is just going up and trying to find edges and swing around the block and try to get kills out of system. I just wonder if they had a setter who was able to run a fast offense, how much better BYU would be, and maybe how much more fresher they would be, because they would be able to do things a little bit differently. But it hats off. They figured out a way to win so far. They've had a decent season. I just don't think it's the BYU that we're used to. So, and again, BYU away from Provo is a little bit different story than BYU at Provo.
Yep. Gentlemen, anything else on UCLA, BYU, not Grand Canyon?
I think it continues to be interesting watching kind of UCLA's lineup unfold, with Sean Kelly being entered at outside hitter, Zach Rama doing a hybrid opposite outside hitter type offense, and how that kind of is continuing to evolve in the absence of Ido David. But it seems like they're playing a little smoother, a little cleaner, at least in terms of the offensive rhythm, from last weekend at Grand Canyon, where it was a little bit more up and down.
Yep.
Theo, you brought up them, but I've seen him just kind of been popping in and out of the lineup. Maybe that's an injury thing too, maybe that's a Sean roster piece where he's trying to figure out the pieces he wants to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because first half of the season, we'd probably all be like, hey, he's an All-American for sure. But second half of the season, I've seen him pop in and out of the lineup quite a bit. So,
Good point.
Well,
And that's the thing with the undersized outside hitter. It's just hard to sustain that,
Yeah.
and maybe
maybe that's not the thing. We're guessing. We had Drew Pickering,
that's true.
5'10", and played the entire year. We wouldn't take him off the court.
Yeah.
So that's us thinking he might be. We don't know that. I think that could be a personnel issue with the coach. Do you know what I mean? And sort of, hey, I'm trying to figure out which pieces I want to play. So
Yeah.
Well, night one, Keone Tim in set 5 was on fire. Unfortunately, he got blocked for match point, but it was him getting him back into that match in that 5th set. They had some deficits that were, for a fifth set match, or at the 5th set, it was a big deficit, and he was able to rally the Cougars back into that to actually push it to 2 sets. So, which, I mean, is fun to watch. It's a high action, and you could tell the crowd was into it because it was a battle going on to win that match. So, anything else on UCLA, BYU? We're going to jump down the freeway off the 10, right off Figueroa for the Stanford USC series. That was our upset of the week. Stanford taking both matches on the weekend, but wanted to get the coaches panel's thoughts on that matchup between Stanford and the Trojans.
His name is Theo Snowy. Just remember it. And Dylan Klein didn't play very well. He might be nursing a little bit of injury. So we'll see what happens next week when things start ramping up a little bit.
Dusher's out too, right?
Yeah. Two big players for USC, and I don't know how deep USC's bench is. I know they've got like 22 or 23 guys on their roster, but those two guys are pretty big contributors for their year so far. And when they're not in, it can pose it to be a little bit of a problem. But Theo Snowy had a great weekend. He had 25 kills, 26 kills on both nights, and that's a pretty big deal for the Stanford to be able to come back and take those.
I think that just kills SC's at-large piece, I think. Like, they were in the hunt, they were in the combo. I'm not sure they are. I think they got to win the MPSF now to get themselves to the tournament. But the other name to throw out there, and I probably pronounced it, was Theorem Brolet.
Theorem Briette.
Wow, 2 double-doubles, 67 assists, 10 digs, and then 50-some assists. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Do you know what I mean? And
good setter from Stanford. Never heard of it.
And then throw Moses Wagner out there against a guy we haven't talked about in a while, but he had
Mo Swag, 25 kills
with, again, 22. So yeah, pretty impressive. Great win for Stanford, and puts, I think, themselves in a good position as they head into the last week.
Yeah, Theorem was the guy I wanted to talk about. The serving and passing was pretty much a wash, and Stanford was way more effective offensively. And I think that's a huge piece of the setter leading that charge and leading the way there. And I think the other piece is, like we've been talking about, the season gets really long and really grueling this time of year, and especially USC with having a younger roster. It's hard on the freshmen, sophomores to maintain their bodies and keep up with that load because, they're used to high school where they're not practicing that much. They're playing club on the weekends, it changes the load and volume that your body's going through, on top of you're still lifting, you're still in the weight room, you're still going to your classes, you're still in probably tougher classes than you had in high school. So a lot of that adds up to this time of year. We obviously see some battles and some big upsets.
Yeah.
The couple of things that when I watched this match, at least I watched night 2, but Briolette, his serve, on the weekend, he had 48 serve attempts. He point scored at 50%.
Wow.
For a setter, it's always nice to have a setter who can really put some pressure from the service line. And he's just really effective, doesn't miss very many, and it's a tough ball to handle, and USC really struggled with it. And then Wagner, some of the swings that he took are swings that he wasn't taking earlier in the year. So I don't know what was going on with him earlier, but he is putting some pace on the ball and looked really, really clean and really good. So those guys are humming leading into the MPSF tournament.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to point out, because one of the things that caught my eye, especially in night 1, was 2 attackers with 25 kills. That was Theo Snowy and Moses Wagner. But in night number 2, didn't realize that Wagner also chipped in 22 kills along with Snowy's 25. So, man, that's an anomaly for 2 pin hitters to get over 20 kills in a match, it seems. So definitely eye-catching team to watch for sure. And Theron Briette running a really good offense. But USC, Jack Duker was obviously on the sideline. Think he may have some injury issues of what's been chatted about. But Dylan Klein on night 1 was at the oppo position. But then he didn't play at all in the night 2. So I hope it isn't anything too serious, and rather just resting for a last week push, because USC has been such a good team and a fun team to watch this year. So they put some new pieces in place, and unfortunately Stanford got hot. And I guess it's the best time for Costy's Cardinal crew to get hot. So anything else to add on to that matchup? No. Well, that brings us to a number that is amazing in our final matchup here, 10,300. That was how many people watched not only on night one, but on night two, both nights sell out at the Simplify Stan Sheriff Center in Hawaii, in the number 1 Long Beach State at number 4 Hawaii.
I thought 10,300 was the number of emails that Theo got regarding his ketchup on hot dogs remark about how wrong he was. I'm sorry.
Hey, Rob,
So-
before you get too thick into this match, which is a phenomenal win for Hawaii the second night, I got to jump off, guys. I got another call I got to get on. So, but my 2 players, Roulette and Kurt Nooster, just so you guys know, those are my 2 players. Kurt Nooster hit 800 the second night and was key on their win, a graduate senior or a senior that's graduating. So, but those are my 2 guys. So, good luck this week. So,
Thanks, man.
See ya.
Good luck,
Yeah.
Dan.
All right, Dan from Lewis. Appreciate you coming on. That leaves the rest of us to talk about Long Beach at Hawaii. Who wants to jump in?
Hawaii at home is so much fun to watch. If you've ever been able to participate in a match, which I know the other coaches on here have, and myself included, where your team is playing at Hawaii, it's just a lot of fun. Their fans are really energetic. They love good volleyball, and they cheer obviously for the home team, but they also appreciate when the other team makes good plays. And, you know, when you watch this match, there are some moments, and I'm talking about the second night specifically, there are some moments when Long Beach chirps a little bit more than they should. And next thing you know, you wake up a sleeping dog, you fire up the engines, and Hawaii just starts revving on all cylinders. And that's part of the charm. You know, when you're in somebody else's gym and you've got somebody on the ropes, or you got somebody who you feel like you're leading in a couple of categories, let the sleeping dog lie. But you know what? That's part of their personality. They like to get at it through the net a little bit, and that's okay. I don't mind that stuff. But you woke up a team that was ready to just play, you know, whatever level they were at that moment, and they found another gear. And yeah, that's a great match to watch. If anybody has access to it, I highly recommend you get a beverage of choice and watch it.
Yeah, the famous poking a stick at the sleeping tiger syndrome. So, how about other coaches here? Who wants to say anything about the match today?
I think for me is kind of one for each team, an emergence of one guy really kind of stepping into a new role. And I think for Long Beach, they've had pretty consistent. They've obviously had the switch at outside hitter with Saponis's injury. But Ben Braun really kind of blew up in my eyes this weekend. He's obviously been a strong player and always been real good, but that middle spot's been something that they've cycled through a few different guys there. And I think he did really well offensively, connecting and hitting with some range, and that was super effective. And then on the other side, no surprise, but Finn Kearney stepping in there on the right side. And he's a young player, really talented, club and USA Volleyball youth career. So it's not a surprise by any stretch of the imagination, but seeing it at that level and seeing how that game translates was really, really cool, especially for a player that's, at least from the outside looking in, seemed like he'd been predominantly training as an outside hitter, and then to get switched back to the right side and to step up due to, you know, what we hope is a shorter term injury for Tritsky. But seeing Finn Kearney really step up, and I thought that was a big difference maker there for them.
Yeah, I remember talking to. Oh, go ahead, Theo.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the better half of the end of night 2 as we were on the bus headed back from San Diego, and I think the biggest piece here. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, just watching the different players. I thought Varga was fantastic. He was really great both nights, but I thought he could have got the ball more on night 2. I mean, I think he hit close to 500 on night 2 and he was really, really good. But I think the story here and why this is so interesting is Moni Nikolov looked more like a college setter than he's looked in his whole career. And that's no insult to him. But he's been above it all for a large portion of this season. He was 5th in points on the team, which is the first time that he's been that low. And if you look at both nights, he hit under 200 offensively. And so all year he has been absolutely electric. And that dynamic of him as an attacker and his ability to point score for the team has really made their offense flow a lot better and given them a lot higher numbers and made them incredibly difficult to stop. And so word on the street was that he's been dealing with some illness and dealing with some stuff, and that may be part of it. But be interesting to see this week if they can kind of get back on track and get him playing the way that he's been playing most of the season.
Yeah.
And
Interesting stat line though was, and I had to double check myself when I heard the commentators say that he didn't have a single ace this weekend, and he did not, which is it says a lot about his service game. He is like 20, 25 ahead of the next closest person, which is Hanno. I think 55, 57 aces on the year. He's right around that 80 something plus range. So, I have to give a huge shout out to another unsung hero. Yeah. Last week, my unsung hero is Kurt Neuster, which Kurt, you made me like the stud this week, called you out as the unsung hero and the guy behind the scenes. But this week, Aleu Choi in serve receive, because he was getting bombed at, and he was able to keep Hawaii in system. But I know that you guys have something else to say about the matches. It was a big weekend in Hawaii. So Jay, were you going to say something, or Theo? I think
no, I just wanted to mention, the sellout for both matches. I think most people on the outside would probably look at that and be like, oh, it's a top 3, top 4 matchup. Of course, they're going to sell out in Hawaii. But I think the cool piece about the Hawaii crowd is, yeah, they were there to see that awesome matchup, but they're really there to celebrate those seniors as well. And when they have that senior night weekend, they always show out to support with love and so much admiration and respect for those guys who have paid their time, and they've been so entertained watching play. And I think that's always a special thing in any gym, but especially out there, kind of seeing that and getting to be a part of it and witness it. A few years ago, it's really unique and really, really special. And I think it's a huge testament of why we all enjoy playing out there and why we love the atmosphere out there, is because of that love they have, not just for the sport, but for all the players that are investing so much into that program or into the matches in the competition.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a great sped up video on Hawaii Athletics or UH men's volleyball of the line out front, and watching him walk through how long that line is to get in on one of the nights was phenomenal and hilarious to see, because, man, it's just the music they put on it, but just shows how crazy a fan following men's volleyball has in Hawaii. And that's the thing. They're going to root against the opponent, but they are fans of volleyball. And that's why we truly appreciate Hawaii volleyball fans.
And let's give a little love, if we should, to the aunties of Hawaii volleyball. If you know what I'm talking about, the aunties are, the women of the boosters and the fans and the supporters of men's volleyball at Hawaii. When a team comes out, the aunties, are just really, really sweet people, and they welcome you with open arms. And obviously they love their Hawaii volleyball team, but they are really, really special people. And so I'm giving a little love out to the aunties of UH volleyball.
Yep. Good call, Jay. Any other matches you want to jump in on, gentlemen, that were eye-catching this week? I know we talked a lot about certain matches in certain conferences, but this is getting close for some conferences. We are in the postseason. There's 1 week left in others. So, and still some seedings to be determined in those conference tournaments.
I'm going to give one shout out. I know sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to cut you up. I'm going to give a little love to the Ivy League champions, Princeton. They beat Harvard both times up at their place here, or at Dillon, at Princeton's place, one night in 5, the other night in 3. Princeton's having a good year, and Sam and his crew are doing a nice job. And so I just want to give a little love out to the Ivy League Wicked Smart champions of Princeton.
All right. Good call. Anything else, gentlemen? Nikki Salem doesn't owe you guys money for anything. I mean, we should, get that out there. Just remember, Nikki, Dan's Venmo is live. So let's go into the other conference updates and news. And I didn't know how to break this down in the segment, so I'm just going to go through bullet point that I've found on the fly this weekend. First of all, congratulations to UCLA's Andrew Rowan, 3,000 career assists for the Bruins in his junior season. So congratulations to you, Andrew. Addition of a new D2 program, Newberry College in South Carolina is what showed up on the feed this week. And breaking at the last ball of the season for Quincy, they officially enter the Great Lakes Valley Conference now for 2026. So big news after a 31 affiliation with the MIVA, they step out and enter their new conference at GLVC. So with that, we're going to go into the Conference Carolinas. The tourney bracket is set. Mount Olive, number 1 seed. Barton, they defeated Barton, who's a 3 seed. So Belmont Abbey gets the number 2. Those 2 teams have the bye, Mount Olive and Belmont Abbey. But thoughts on that, the tournament that in the Conference Carolinas?
Those are the 2 teams that I think will meet in the finals is Belmont Abbey and Mount Olive. And I got to give Mount Olive a little bit of an edge just because they're having a really fantastic year. I think they only have 3 losses on the year so far, which is pretty stellar for them. And I wanted to comment about the GLVC with Quincy. Quincy is not leaving the MIVA, but the GLVC might start their own D2 conference here quickly in the next year. So I know you mentioned earlier it was a little fast for them to be into that, but I think the GLVC in the next couple of years could create their own D2 conference, and that could be a big shaker right there.
Wow. All right. Anything else, gentlemen, on those 2 on the Conference Carolinas or the previous items before that?
No, I think Mount Olive obviously is having an amazing season and really is in a great spot here headed into the tournament. And then Belmont Abbey has a lot of guys who won that tournament last year who are coming back and have a lot of experience, and they've played a really tough schedule. So, at least early on when Mount Olive played Belmont Abbey, Mount Olive was pretty much in control a good majority of that match, but definitely will be an intriguing match to see how that shakes out.
Yeah.
I had a question for the coaches. How does Lincoln Memorial get into the NCAA tournament?
They don't.
Not possible.
Not as an independent. They would have to schedule every top 10 team from every conference at least once to be considered and win all those matches to be considered as an independent. No, I think in the history of men's volleyball, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, no independent has ever gotten a chance to get into the dance. And it is a shame because they are a scrappy, good team this year. And were they in a conference, could push for the AQ if they were in it. But what I'm confused by is why the IVF, which is the Independent Volleyball Federation, I think that's what it stands for, why they don't just start their own conference. Then you have your AQ. It's a pretty simple solution. But I think with the shakeup of all these conferences, with the GLVC breaking off, you might see some teams get into that. If the independents are smart, though, you guys have the ability to create your own conference. You can get an AQ. It'll take a couple of years, but you could get it.
I think it'd be really cool. Lincoln Memorial opens up their schedule next year and tries their best to get as many of those top teams in just to shake it up.
Yeah.
And have put everybody on notice so that it's obvious that we got a problem,
Yep, absolutely.
Well, they finished a regular season. Actually, I believe they finished a regular season at 21-1 on a 14-match winning streak to finish the season. So that's why we're talking about Lincoln Memorial. But it was actually a great
pretty darn good.
The IVA, which Jay had mentioned, their conference tournament 2-day deal happening April 18th and 19th. Opening round on that Friday. Semis, finals, all within 2 days. So wasn't clear who was hosting. I imagine Lincoln Memorial is the host, being that they won the conference, but couldn't find any documentation as to where. So, and then that brings us over to the ECC, new this year, or actually last year, the East Coast Conference, title clinched by St. Thomas Aquinas, undefeated in conference, 14-9 on the year. They will be hosting their conference tournament the 18th and 19th, semis and final, which then brings us to the NEC, which currently, I believe they're not finished yet, but LIU and St. Francis sit atop tied at 5-1. But what do we know about the NEC teams right now? Because they are going to get that automatic berth, even with 5 teams. They were given a waiver this year because of an unplanned exit of one of the teams.
I think St. Francis is the sentimental favorite because their team is dropping to Division III after next year. So for Rummy to go out with a title and get a chance to go to the big dance with his team, he's been there for a long time, and St. Francis has always played little brother to Penn State when they were in the EIVA, and they had a few good years there for a little while. But unfortunately, I'd love to see Rummy go out with a chance going to the big dance. So I'd have to say right now, my support, if you will, or my fan favorite, I'd love to see St. Francis win that tournament.
I think on
Story
top
like
of that,
ending to a career.
St. Francis also has dealt with some adversity, and obviously every program does, but they have an opposite, Nathan Zinni, who coming into it probably would have been the favorite NEC player of the year. 6'8", 6'9", opposite with a cannon of an arm. And he's been out all season. So obviously hoping he's all right. And, but the fact they're still having success, and, at least their opportunity to host this tournament comes down to this week, which is pretty exciting for Rummy. And then LIU also has had their own bit of adversity in terms of the
coaching
and everything out there. So it's seeing the teams and those players really rally around that is really cool. And I think both teams, whoever makes it out, is going to be very well deserving and have played really tough schedules on both ends.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because you got Long Island sitting at top, tied with St. Francis, and Long Island lost this weekend, and so did St. Francis. Damon's a little bit of a dark horse, and Merrimack coming in and getting a little bit of an upset. But yeah, I agree with these guys, and to see the domino effect that's been happening with a lot of these D1s, and I'm sure we have not seen the end of it, right? Where we've got teams that are universities that are having to make tough decisions about their athletics departments and about what their university is going to do moving forward, and some lack of support on just the side of education. If you take athletics out of it, there's a lot of change that's happening in the United States and across sports, and would love to see St. Francis go out with something special, especially for those student athletes and for our friend Rummy.
Yeah. Well, just a side note on St. Francis. I know Jay had mentioned this, but Nathan Zinni, or actually Brad mentioned it, that lineup changes with Zinni in the lineup because he is a cannon. But carrying the big load of it this year is Mike Deerdorf, who's been,
yeah,
he's had a phenomenal season carrying that load for St. Francis. And then for Long Island, I remember going into this season literally 2 or 3 weeks, or still wasn't certain about a coaching situation there. It wasn't until I got a DM from a parent said, "Hey, you guys need to look into the Long Island situation. They don't even have a coach." So, definitely some stories to watch there for sure. Let's move over to the SIAC, which is the Southeast Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. And right now, Fort Valley State, undefeated 12-0. Larry Rath and his boys taking care of business. Edward Waters finishes second. I do believe that Fort Valley will be hosting the conference tournament, which is this coming weekend as well. But any thoughts on the SIAC, because they are the auto berth again this year?
Yeah, Larry's a good coach, and he's quickly establishing his program as the team of the SIAC, and that's awesome because Larry's a great guy. All of us know him really, really well. He's an outside hitter back in the day for Ball State, and then went on to become an assistant at Charleston, and now he took over his own program. And I know, he was looked at for some bigger jobs, but he decided to stay at Fort Valley State. They upped the ante a little bit and kept him there, and only let him have to coach one job and still, be able to live and survive. And that's a huge deal, because when you're a coach of two programs, I've done that in my career. It's really tough to put all your eggs into both baskets. You got to be able to, focus your energy, so to speak, on one team. And Larry was doing both programs, as well as a number of coaches that do around the country. Any of the coaches out there that are listening, if you coach both the men's and women's teams at your schools, kudos to you, because it's really, really tough. And one that we talk about a lot here, Nikki Sandlin, did that for a long time, and she's had a lot of success. So that just shows you how much of a baller she is. But, Larry is just doing his thing, and super proud of him and all the work he's put into that program. And, that when you have that kind of success, they could become the UCLA of the SIAC, which is pretty cool when you get the pick of the litter, so to speak. So good for him.
Yeah, I Jay, I kind of want to echo what you were talking about the two teams, and specifically Nikki, right? For most of her career, she's had to coach the men and the women at McKendree, and now she's just focusing on the men, and she has found herself inside of the top 10 for the first time in her career. And so if there's any athletic directors listening, this is not a two-team job. This is definitely built for us to focus on one team at a time. And but I agree, Larry Rather, and what he's done with Fort Valley. I mean, they are definitely the favorites in the SIAC. And I think what's going to be interesting is to watch him in his career, and can he bridge the gap between the SIAC and the top teams in the country. And when he gets these AQs, will they be able to find a way to do some damage and make an upset? I think that's going to be the ultimate task for that conference and for Larry Rather. But if anyone can do it, that's definitely the guy.
Yeah, I think Fort Valley's, like these guys said, they're the clear favorite. And I think if any of the other teams were to knock them off, it would be a bit surprising and an upset. They definitely could, but I'd expect Fort Valley State to be playing an NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Well, we've got two conferences remaining, and we kind of mentioned them briefly, but I want to go back just to make sure that we've, dotted our I's and crossed our T's, so to speak. But MPSF, obviously we've mentioned USC's 2 losses may have hurt their at-large chances, but what about the rest of the MPSF? UCLA and USC still have to finish out the week facing each other in a series. Can some wonkiness happen here? Or what do you guys think?
I think right now, I think Stanford has positioned themselves to be a team that now is in that top tier of the MPSF. I think over the course of the year, maybe they were kind of hit or miss here and there, but they have really started to emerge as a team that can push for that title. UCLA, tooling around with their lineup a little bit. Still, I think the favorites, and USC, who was a team that I thought if they were 100% healthy going into this weekend in the tournament could be the team that emerges from there and maybe get in that large bid. Now with some of these question marks coming up in this weekend, I wonder if either UCLA or USC or both don't decide to sit a couple of their top players in order to prepare for the tournament, because that MPSF tournament, you may only see one team come out of that conference for the championship. And that is a little bit of a bummer, because I'd like to see an at-large come from the Big West and from the MPSF. And at this moment, with USC's both losses this weekend against Stanford, those chances could be hurt a little bit. So this weekend is going to be, there'll be some eye openers for sure.
How is this tournament working?
That was my question.
Like, Menlo is listed at number 5 ahead of Grand Canyon, but because they all didn't play the same teams, what does anybody know? Like,
Rob, you got this, right?
Well, no, I interviewed Nygaard because I asked him about it early on, and there's going to be a 3-coach panel that's going to determine the participants. Volley Talk had, we lost Theo. We lost Theo. Or he's in the drink fridge. One of the two.
Wait a minute. Who are the 3 coaches? Do we know?
Do they determine the seeding or like?
Yes.
Well, I have to go back and listen, but it was one of the earlier episodes of the season, because I actually spoke to Jeff early on, and then Fody Ellis, the commissioner of the MPSF, and within the same week. So go back into the podcast, but I would, that was what
can we do a thought experiment? And as a 3-coach panel between myself, Theo, and Jay, we can see the MPSF tournament right here.
Yeah.
Shoot from the hip.
Oh, you should offer your services,
Brad.
Wow.
Okay, so we got UCLA, the number 1 seed, right?
Yep.
I mean, if Pepperdine wins both out of BYU, they could be the 2 seed, but most likely will probably be USC at the 2 seed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Then we go Pepperdine 3.
Yep.
Then 4, we got BYU, Grand Canyon, Stanford. Stanford play this weekend.
Stanford, this will be the 4 seed.
Really?
Yep.
Who's Stanford playing this weekend?
Grand Canyon.
Oh, that'll be the determining factor right there.
Yep. And then BYU, Grand Canyon will be the next 2 seeds. And then
Menlo would be the 7th.
Menlo.
Right?
What about Concordia? What about
Not everyone
yeah,
goes, right?
Concordia and Vanguard are out.
there you go. So there it is. Menlo. The
Oh,
Oaks.
breaking news, Rob.
Breaking news.
We
The
have
three,
the
Dude,
figured
three
it out.
coaches panel just figured it out. It's done.
I find it so funny and actually ridiculous that 3 coaches inside the conference are going to give the seating. I listen, I know all those coaches. I know their integrity's high. So by no means do I want any of you to call me up or text me or email me, go, dude, you totally know me. I'm not going to screw anybody over. I know. But really? We're going to let the inmates run the asylum? Come on. Come on.
I mean, really, it seems to me like if you're going to do it this way, why wouldn't you just have all of the teams vote? Like, I mean, what does 3 coaches do for that conversation versus just having the entire conference vote and vote for their rankings, vote for their positioning? I mean, seems to me like if you at least have a voice in the room. I mean, they already, Vanguard, Concordia, and Menlo barely have a schedule in the room, so they might as well have the ability to at least talk.
First of all, I love how you call it Menlo and not Menlo. But secondly, hey, commissioner, isn't that your job? Why are you putting the responsibility on coaches? So all they're going to do is get hate mail from their friends within the conference. I just don't get it. It makes no sense.
Well, if I remember correctly from that podcast episode with Jeff, the conference was in agreement with the panel. To what extent, I don't know for sure, but they knew, like Jeff had actually anticipated that there was going to be resistance and questioning of the method, but it's a 1 or 2 year solution for now until things sort out. So
just no. But hey, this just in, I just saw a ticker go across the TV. CSUN is now known as Northridge.
There we go. We're not they're finishing it. We're off the rails. So yeah, that's the MPSF, still TBD apparently. So maybe I can get Jeff on the horn or Fody and see what's happening with the panel, or maybe we just wait till after the conference tournament. So that leaves the Big West still in play, one final week of play. And I think we did talk about the final matchups and it being hosted in Hawaii, but I just feel like there's still things to be determined in a huge kind of way, at least from the 3 through 6 seedings. And that is going to be one crazy tournament, because it's one thing to have the teams, but to have it in Hawaii is another X factor that has to be put into the mix. So, we've got, let's see, I believe Santa Barbara will be hosting Hawaii for 2. And, if Santa Barbara plays like they did on Thursday night against Irvine, they're going to give a resistance. And, with it being the final week of the season, I could see those young guys really stepping up, and then drop off in night 2, like what similar happened this last week. But Brad, you got a couple matches against Long Beach State, and then of course Theo with Irvine. So closing out the season, what could we see in the Big West?
Well, I think I can see Northridge become the team that everybody doesn't want to play. Jalen Phillips. Hey, Theo, I'm just going to say this now. Go get that kid daily massages, get that kid ice buckets to sit in, get that kid a Ben Gay sponsorship, because everyone in the country knows where the ball's going to go, and he's going to be the guy. And, it doesn't mean
still in Delabosov.
Yeah, doesn't mean that he doesn't have other pieces. By no means. Listen, Theo has done a fantastic job this year at Northridge, but it's really going to be it's the Jalen Phillips show, so to speak, and how CSUN goes is how Phillips goes. And if he's not having a good night, that could be really, really rough. But listen, again, I know why they have it at Hawaii. This is no surprise. They make money for the conference. They make money at their tournaments. And it pays for a lot of the teams, if not all the teams, to travel out there. And so I get it. So it's not an unfair, tactic, so to speak. But being at home versus being on the road, whole lot different story. And Hawaii becomes, in my eyes, the favorite over Long Beach, no doubt. But Northridge is a team that I definitely could see that could steal something from somebody somewhere without them looking.
I'm just
Sorry,
saying,
Brad.
Brad's team can steal.
Well, I think to a certain extent, Jay's right. Like the biggest implications is probably us and Irvine, in the sense that San Diego moves up. Essentially, the way that the seeding in the tournament works, we still face each other the way things are right now. And so unless Irvine was to lose too, that would be the only way that we could see some like real significant changes in the matchups and where things go. I think Hawaii and Long Beach are pretty much there, just given the fact that they own the splits over Irvine right now, right?
Yeah.
So it seems to me like the biggest implications really come down to us and Irvine and kind of the way that series goes and the way it shakes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Brad,
exactly
anything
what I was gonna say. Really, the 3-4 is kind of the spot that's in flux right now. So,
Well, regardless, this is going to be one gnarly tournament to watch. Not that the others aren't, but I mean, the way the battle's been going off, looking at all 6 of the teams in the top 20 with 5 of them in the top 10. So, and all the records, I was looking at the overall records of all the Big West teams, with exception of Santa Barbara. We know why they are sub 500 overall. They had injuries, a lot of injuries to deal with in different lineup changes throughout the most of the season. So still a lot to be determined. With that,
Rob, fun fact, Big West Conference play, all the teams are 500.
Insane.
I have a stat, Brad.
Sorry, that was a NCAA basketball joke. One of the SEC coaches was like dumbfounded by that stat.
Do you coach at UC San Diego?
No, it's actually pronounced George Mason.
Mason.
Well, I want to shout out, the center of the week was Don Ovan Constable.
It's starting to feel like Austin Powers right now. Johnson.
Well, with that, let's go to our players of the week. However many you want to name, because there's a lot of phenomenal play and a lot of things shifting. So, let's go Brad first. I know that he had the tough week. 5's not his favorite number.
Tough week too.
I'll go Nero Omene, and we'll go Teo Snui with that.
Man.
All right. Go to Theo.
Oh, come on. Dang it.
Yeah. We didn't talk a lot about Ohio State, but they've been playing some really good volleyball recently. And Shane Wetzel's a big part of that. So he had 20 kills this weekend against Quincy one night, and he's doing some really nice things. I think that Ohio State makes that MIVA thing real interesting in terms of a team that you don't really want to see right now. They're doing some nice things, and if Shane Wetzel keeps it up, they're gonna be pretty deadly. So that's one. The other one is Mo Wagner. And Snowy was so good that he kind of slept under the radar with his kill count and just what he was doing, but he passed the eye test for me. Some of the swings he took were just absolutely fantastic.
And Rob, can I throw one more in there before?
No.
Yeah, because Jay said no, yes.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Nothing in like it. My turn. All right.
All right. We'll come back to you, Brad, if you really.
I've got 2. I know that Brad mentioned him earlier, and this is probably the kid he wants to talk about, but the emergence of Finn Kearney at Hawaii. He had a good weekend. He's been sitting behind Tetrisky. He obviously been playing outside hitter a little bit this year. Has been a serve sub, but this kid's legit, and all of us coaches have been watching him over the years in club, and high flyer and a whip of a left arm. And so I think Finn Kearney could be a kid that moving forward could be a real big factor for Hawaii. And the second one, sponsored by Blue Emu, is Jalen Phillips. I mean, the kid's got to be the national player of the week, right? He just had a phenomenal weekend. His shoulder is currently being rehabbed. They took it off and put some AI on it and did all kinds of things. The kid just jumps a ton, hits a ton, and he is the man for Northridge. And so I give him a little bit of love, and I'm sure everybody else in the country is going, duh.
Brad, did you have another?
No, I was just joking.
You did. You just want to try and steal one from Jay. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what he was going to do.
Well, Dan actually took mine. It was Kurt Neusterer, because last week I did say that he is the unsung hero of Hawaii, but his entire career in those big points where the match is on the line, I mean, he's done it to Irvine so many times. He's come up with multiple blocks, back-to-back blocks, big service aces, and putaways his entire career. But because they've got such the lineup at Hawaii that he just gets kind of caught in the background. So I know he's already on there, but Aleu Choi, I've got to give him a shout out. I mean, he was really good in serve receive. And I mean, he was flying all over. Mind you, he's like 5'7", 5'8". Watching him just cruising and flying all over the place, playing defense, keeping balls in play, and putting up hittable balls when out of system, definitely gets my nod this week. So with that, hot mic moment. I think Jay is
Matches to watch, Rob?
What's that?
Matches to watch?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we're watching everything, but go for it. Why not?
I think,
Brett.
Let's go. I think you got two that are really, I'll leave it at two here, that are going to decide some conferences. Starting off, oh crap, where'd it go? We got Princeton, Penn State, sponsored by the EIVA fans of America. And then the other one, we have the Conference Carolinas, or sorry, the NEC, Long Island, St. Francis. Determine who's going to be hosting out there. I think those will be two good ones, and I'll let these guys clean up with some of the other great matches.
All right, Jay, you can go second. You're rattling quite a bit over there. And you start off grumpy, and now you're like happy again. So I'm excited.
I mean, Brad stole the big one for me. Penn State, Princeton is obviously the main one I'm going to be watching. I am going to be watching Lewis Ball State. That's the first round of the MIVA tournament. That matchup is it's really going to be hotly contested, and Ball State has been licking their wounds a little bit in recent weeks, and Lewis is on a tear right now. So I've got Lewis a little bit in there. But my match of the week coming up, sponsored by Cal State's and University of California lovers across America, which obviously doesn't exist, but the 405 freeway is going to be definitely used, is Northridge Irvine. I want to see, and here's the reason why. I don't know if it really makes it a big factor. I have not looked at the Big West standings. I know that Northridge is now third. I don't know where UCI is. Are they fourth or fifth or something like that? But
we're fourth. Irvine's third.
Okay, so 3 will play 6 and 4 will play 5. I think at this point, it almost really doesn't matter where you fall in that whole grand scheme of things. I'm going to be interested to see, and I know Theo won't tip his hat to this, does he give Phillips a little rest? Does Irvine give Heno and Flexen a little rest? And that is going to be the big determining factor, because your tournament in Hawaii the following week, you're already going to be tired because you're flying. Now, are you tired from playing in a weekend prior when maybe those matches don't mean much? So I'm going to be watching that one with some open eyeballs.
All right, that leaves you, Theo.
Yeah, I think we talked about it when we were bringing up the MPSF, but that Grand Canyon Stanford, and what does that look like? Both those teams are playing really, really well, and so I think that's definitely one that we've got to mention here at least 2 or 3 times.
Well, both those coaches are on the 3-person committee, and they wrote themselves 1 and 2, so just it really doesn't matter anymore.
So they're going to rest everybody. We're good. We're in.
Exactly.
We officially decided. Yeah, so that's one that I think we got to put in there. And then here's an interesting one. And so I don't know exactly what's going on, but I think San Diego Long Beach is going to be really, really interesting. if Moni plays the way that he played this weekend, I think this is going to be a long night for Long Beach. And San Diego is playing some really great ball right now. And, we obviously witnessed it ourselves. But, Brad, I think you got a real opportunity in front of you.
Ooh.
There you go.
Yeah.
I gotta jump in before Rob has a heart attack. There's also USC, UCLA. I know. I saw Rob freaking out. They didn't get it.
Some small rivalry that nobody's heard about. It's not that big of a match.
Well, I'm just curious what lineup USC is going to come out with.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to see the best volleyball possible. All of us as fans want to see that. But, you guys bring up we're near the end of the season. Conference tournament's more important at this point, especially with what's at stake for USC, the at-large. I mean, maybe out the window at this point. Maybe there's going to put all their eggs in potentially winning the conference tournament. But UCLA has something to say about that. And Ito David, we haven't seen him the last few weeks. Could he come back in during tournament time? I mean, there's so many things that are up in the air in the MPSF. And we still haven't really chatted about Pepperdine playing and being a factor in that process. So I feel like if Cole Hartke of Pepperdine and Ryan Barnett get, they've been hot all season long, but if they dial it up 1 or 2 notches, they could turn things around in there. So yeah, there's still a lot. And Stanford, the rise of Stanford in the last 2 weeks alone could be another, thing that could upset the apple cart, so to speak. So I don't know. It's just too much craziness, and that's why we like watching it. So any other matches? Because if not, that means hot mic time. No. All right. Hot mic moments. Jay,
I'm going to let Theo and Brad go first in case they have one.
Don't have one.
All right. I got 3.
Are you going to do
First
volleyball boring with them?
And one of them is not volleyball related, and that's my first one. I got to give a little love to Rory McIlroy winning the Masters tournament yesterday. I watched that final round from beginning to end, and he has hit the Grand Slam. He's won all 4 majors now in his career, which puts him in elite status with 5 other great golfers. You might have heard of a couple of them, like Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, that kind of elite company. So Rory, after 11-year drought of no major wins, you finally get your Grand Slam and you win yesterday. And it was a fantastic round. Lots of ups and downs, crazy shots. That was absolutely fun to see. Secondly, hey, everybody, it's bracketology time for men's volleyball. All the brackets that we put together last year, it's now time to start filling those out. This is our March Madness, and don't come after me, NCAA, for stealing that word. It's not that big of a deal. And it's our turn. So let's start filling out those brackets. Whoever online in Volley Talk World or whoever wants to build that thing out and start filling it in, it's going to be a lot of fun. But my last one, and this is a big one. This is an update from last week. And if you remember on Monday, it was the hearing day. We were all glued to our screens and watching the tickers. I remember, or if you remember, last few weeks, I've been talking about how I just got this weird feeling that the judge is going to talk about roster limits. Well, she did. And I got to give Judge Wilkin a little bit of love here. She heard throughout the course of the day all the different arguments. And apparently she has said, look, I look at the framework of the House versus NCAA settlement, and I like the majority of it. But there are 2 things that I want you to go back and work on and then bring back to me before I sign off on it. And the first one was the 10-year moratorium on being able to negotiate any kind of revenue sharing money, so to speak. So she wanted to make sure that athletes that maybe come in years 8, 9, and 10 of this whole thing still have the ability to negotiate for more money, because more money is going to come into this. And she didn't want to limit those people, which I give her some props on that foresight. But she also talked about roster limits and being able to grandfather in the kids that are already on rosters at these universities and figuring out a way to let them have a phase in, phase out period for these kids to stay. And for her to say those things means that enough of us over the course of this year either spoke up publicly, wrote letters, called the heads of our associations, had high-level meetings, had high-level interviews with newspapers, whatever the case is, we spoke loud enough that she heard either some or all. And then when the athletes came in and talked about their roster spots being taken away and how this is not fair to them, there's something in her that clicked and said, yes, we need to do right by these athletes because we are doing them a disservice by just discounting them and making this roster limit so fast, this decision. So I got to give Judge Wilkin a little love. She's supposed to hear back, I believe, either this week or next week about the updating on the whole hearing in the case and what the final outcome will be. I don't know if it's going to be a 1-year grace period, a 2 or 3 year grace period. We don't know what the case is. Is it going to be somebody who's only on scholarship only versus somebody who is a true walk-on? I don't know how that's going to go. But thank you, Judge Wilkin, for saying out loud what we all have been saying for this whole time, which is, why are we killing these kids' dreams by making them have to leave after 6 months of this thing being decided? So those are my hot takes.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's what's interesting about this entire thing is that, you know, obviously we all were aware for at least the last 8 or 9 months that these major changes were coming to the NCAA. But for the most part, everybody's been kind of guessing about what it's actually going to look like. And even after we saw the initial decisions and what the NCAA was planning and plotting, to now be getting down the stretch and having the judge actually take a look and say, hey, listen, some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. So if I'm going to sign off on this, you got to relook at a couple of items. And what's really exciting is we're not going to have this hit a wall situation. At least it looks that way now, where a lot of men's volleyball players were on the docket to lose opportunities, and not just talking about it, but the high school kids that are coming in as that recruiting class was really being majorly impacted. But also the current student athletes who are in our gyms right now, who rightfully so deserve to be there. And yeah, it's really cool. This is a great notification, at least for the current situation. And I still think that we're up to learn a lot more about what this is going to look like in the future.
Yeah. Brad, any parting thoughts here on that topic?
That's it. Well said, both of you guys.
Gosh, I wanted to bring up a topic, but that's like it's so minuscule compared to what Jay's brought up. So I'm going to leave it where it's at. So we did allude to it earlier. Jay did. So check it out. JTM Ball. See Dustin Watton's statement on is volleyball boring. But with that, that concludes episode 270, week 15 recap of NCAA Division 1-2 volleyball. That's Theo Edwards of CSUN, Jay Hoslick of George Mason, Brad Rothschild of UC San Diego, and departing early, but still here with us, Dan, friend of Lewis. So, gentlemen, best of luck this week.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to College Volleyball Weekly. Be sure to follow Rob Aspero at the Rob on the Mic on Instagram and at Rob on the Mic on Twitter.